So you have concluded a scientific study, and you need to summarize your research and present your results in a concise manuscript to submit for evaluation and publication. This presentation hopes to assist students and newcomers with the process of writing their first scientific paper. It highlights the basic components to remember when writing or drafting a scientific paper to present your research. Although the presentation is mostly important for journal publication, it is equally relevant to proceedings papers and technical reports. Almost every scientific paper has a basic layout that consists of a title, an abstract with a list of keywords, an introduction, some discussion on materials and methods, and ending with the results and conclusion. And since your work is based on and extends existing research, you need to cite the sources you used as references. Let's start with the title. Some journals will stipulate a limited number of characters for the title, but it is generally a good idea to use the least amount of words needed to describe the content of the paper. Make sure the title is specific to the content. If the study focuses on a specific field, region, or molecule, name it explicitly. For example, using a title such as "The Impact of the Atmosphere on Observational Data" for a paper related to the impact of the Earth's atmosphere on observed signals is technically correct, but it does not effectively describe the focus of the research presented. There are many research fields related to atmosphere and atmospheric sciences, and if you are not clear and specific, the paper may not reach your target audience. Rather use something like "Scattering of electromagnetic waves in the troposphere," or even better, "Temperature effects on tropospheric radio signal strength" for UHF band. When evaluating the interest of a new paper, the reader will often give the paper a quick overview, focusing mostly on the title, abstract, and conclusion, before deciding to study the detail of the paper if they consider it relevant. It is thus important that the abstract enable the reader to identify the basic content and relevance at a glance. The abstract should concisely state both the main objective as well as the scope of the study, followed by a short summary of the results and principal conclusions. As with the title, the abstract is often limited in the number of words it can contain, so unless absolutely necessary, avoid details on methodology that is better addressed in the discussion sections. Also, quite often, as in the case of conference proceedings, the title and abstract may be published separately, so make sure that these two sections form a self-contained unit, clearly summarizing the paper. Please don't use cross-references to tables and figures, and avoid uncommon jargon and acronym, since these will only be defined later in the body of your paper. Next, be generous with your keywords and make sure to list all relevant keywords. In addition to the title, the keyword list may increase the ease and likelihood that people interested in your research will find your paper. Most indexing and abstracting services will extract the title and keywords to use in cross-referencing and computer searching. In general, the aim of the introduction is to place your research in the bigger scheme of the study field, as well as to provide background information for relevant literature. Make sure to highlight such sections, results, and questions in the reference literature as relevant and why. This information will help the reader to place your research in the context of the literature. Next, establish the contribution of your work to the research, as well as indicate the scope and need of the research. Try to make the introduction easily readable. Make sure the text reads smoothly and flow and is not interrupted so much by citations or cross-references. Be comprehensive in your presentation and use full sentences. Avoid listing bullet points unless necessary for clarity. Optionally, you can end the introduction by clearly stating the objectives of the work, guiding the reader towards the details to be presented in the discussion. Some authors like to end the discussion with a blurb such as, "This work is structured as follows. Section 2 introduces. Section 3 discusses. And please note, this is particularly useful for your longer papers. The more detailed section of a paper generally starts with a section presenting some discussion on the application and methods used. The main purpose of this section is to provide enough information to enable other researchers to repeat the study or analysis and reproduce the results presented. Extreme details are not required. High-level algorithms and methodology will be sufficient to enable a competent researcher to mimic your work. Please make sure to note assumptions, constants, and deviations where necessary. If you are presenting a new technique or implementation, try to describe your analysis and application in some chronological order to make it easier to follow. For more standard techniques, make sure to at least name the methods and algorithms used with relevant references. Also, it is important to include some discussion on error measurement and verification. This will help the reader to build a measure of confidence in the results presented in the later sections. As with the analysis, the detail presented for the verification and error analysis discussion will depend on whether the methods are common or specialized to your study. Presenting the results obtained following your analysis and implementation must be done with care. When presenting data, give a condensed description highlighting the science aim, as well as any processing applied to the data other than your analysis. When presenting the results, don't assume the reader has your knowledge to interpret the results and extract the information unaided. Describe the results shown in context to the science aim of the paper. Make sure to guide the user through the results. Explicitly state how the results fit with current research through comparison with previous work or theoretical expectation. In addition to introducing the results from your research or analysis, make sure to point out the implication of the results on your research field, as well as highlight and addressing any and all peripheral outcomes, such as trends or other features noticeable in the result. Use figures and tables to display the result in a way that enables easy visual evaluation. Include informative column headings in your table. Always add short but informative labels to your figure axis, and please always specify your units. Ensure the text on your figure and table is readable. The fonts used in your figures should be consistent and match the font used in the figure caption. Many journals will insist on this. Some will give leeway, but not a lot. It is very important to provide a short but informative table and figure caption. Close the paper by presenting your conclusions. Be sure to address the objectives of the study and to summarize the significance of the results. Reiterate the principal findings presented in the paper, as well as any theoretical or practical implications of the work. Show how the conclusion and generalization drawn are established based on the analysis and evidence presented. Take care to address all the questions posed during the introduction and discussion, and be careful of speculation. Do not extend your conclusions beyond what is clearly presented by your results. All scientific papers end by listing existing literature used and referenced during the main text. A list of reference order by alphabetic, author surname, or number, depending on the publication, must be provided at the end of your paper. The reference list should contain all references cited in the text, but no more, and be consistent with your use of journal abbreviations. In some cases, appendices containing more detailed information in addition to what is presented in the main body of the paper, but which may be of interest to domain experts, can be added. Appendices should only be included if relevant to methods discussed in the main body and mentioned as such. It is worth noting that journals will often not publish the appendix with a paper copy, but rather make it available online in a PDF version. So please make sure that the main body of your paper contains all information to fully present your research. Lastly, submitting your paper for publication. Most publishers have guidelines about the manuscript preparation and submission process, which may differ depending if the publication will be a paper copy, be an online publication only, or require mailed submission. Most will divide the paper using some, if not all, of the general sections discussed, but some may indeed use totally different structures altogether. There are always guidelines for preparing your paper for submission, and these will include guidelines on how to prepare tables and figures as well. Also important is the number the journal uses for literature references, which may be long, name and date, or compressed, just number. It is very important to follow the publication's specific requirements and be prepared to revise your draft paper into the journal-specific format before submitting your paper. You may also have to update and resubmit a couple of times, as referees and editors of the journal return with comments and corrections. Lastly, remember to always check your draft against the journal's guide to authors before submitting the paper, and always submit an informative cover letter with your paper submission. The best advice is to have a chat with colleagues who have submitted papers to the journal before and ask them to proofread your draft and give feedback on the presentation. Ask for feedback such as clarity of the results and conclusion, appropriateness of your draft to the journal, as well as some hints on what type of information to include in the cover letter. Thank you.